Hey everybody, it's Emma. Thank you very much for joining me in this video. I'm going to put some stuff on my face. Now, if you have seen the last several videos I've done, you know that I'm in the midst of a kind of collection overview slash declutter. I have filmed my blush, bronzer, highlighter declutter and a big giant eyeshadow one. However, when I was going back to edit them, I was getting bored. And if I'm getting bored, then I'm gonna guess you will also be bored. So I'm trying to figure out another way to show you the stuff that I've decluttered, and one of the things that occurred to me was to wear it. A lot of the things that I have been decluttering aren't necessarily bad products, but they're just either I have dupes for them in my collection so I don't need multiples of the same shade, or maybe it's just something that I don't reach for, stuff like that. So I'm going to put some of it on my face and maybe talk about some other things that I've decluttered along the way and see if maybe this is a slightly more interesting approach than watching my camera fade in and out of focus on a chair with a bunch of products on it. So let's dive in. All right, so I'm decluttering a few different single eyeshadows. I have 3 of the e.l.f. long-lasting Lustrous eyeshadows. They don't have shades on them. They're a sheer kind of top coat sort of product that I have really enjoyed in the past, but they're starting to dry out. I use them maybe at Christmas, and that's about it. So these are gonna go. I have a couple of the NYX Prismatic eyeshadows. This one is in Tin, this one is in Punk Heart. Both of these look prettier in the pan than they do on my eyes. Punk Heart looks really beautiful, purpley, steely awesomeness, but it just ends up looking muddy on my face. So those are also heading out of my collection. I also have a couple of the Milani Bella Eyes eyeshadows. These are really great, but I never reach for them. I have a few palettes I'm also decluttering, as well as a couple that are kind of in a sort of timeout, I guess. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with them. First is Heart and Heavy from Wet n Wild. This is one of their limited edition trios. It's actually a really nice palette, but Petalette, one of their newer quads, has these 2 shades in it, and I never use the pink, so that can go. I'm also letting go of this Milani Everyday Eyes palette in Bare Necessities because I never use it. However, I am considering keeping it around and depotting this shade because it's beautiful and is a really nice face highlight. That is a project for another day though. I am decluttering this Happy Birthday NYX palette, which was the Ulta birthday gift. It's a sturdy palette, it's got a great mirror. The eyeshadows are meh, and I think I've used this once. I think actually on my channel, if that video actually made it, I will link it. But the eyeshadows are kind of meh. I'm also letting go of the Au Naturel Wet n Wild palette in Nude Awakening. They've reformulated this palette, although I've heard mixed reviews on it. I don't really use it. I'm not much of a neutral shadow person, and I don't do my makeup the YouTube / Instagram way, where a matte transition shade is essential and you have to use 10 eyeshadows to make a look. So I really just don't use that palette. And finally, I think this is the one that I will put on my face today, is Not a Basic Peach from Wet n Wild. This is something that you can get right now if you want to. The shades in here that I really was drawn to are the worst shades in the palette. So there's that. So I'm going to take a base shadow brush into this kind of orangey shade. And bring that to the outer corner, through the crease. Then I'm going to take this gold here, just with that same brush on the other side. Not that I really care if these get mixed up. Put that on the inner corner. It's really not showing up that well. And then just to add insult to injury, I'm going to take this kind of rosy gold peachy shade that looks so beautiful in the palette. This is one of the ones that I really want to love, and it's chunky, it fades quickly. It's quite a bit of fallout, which I honestly don't really care, but just because I feel like complaining about this palette. I'll throw that in there. Now, to be fair, you know, it does work better if I use a glitter primer underneath it or if I use my finger to apply. But again, for the sake of complaining, I'm not doing any of that. I want to add a little bit more pink to this look, so I'm going to take this peach, the peach shade next to the very disappointing teal, work that into the very outer. It's going to be blown out a bit. Because this is getting a little out of control, I'm going to take this top transition shade on that crease brush and just try to use that to soften this a little bit. I'm going to take a fine liner brush and go into this dark brown shade. Just going to stamp that into the lash line, just kind of halfway and out. And then I'm going to finish off with this Stila Kitten Karma Mini. I don't prefer this. I got the Written in the Stars set, which had a mini of Diamond Dust, which is definitely my favorite. Smoky Storm, unless I'm wrong, which I also like. And then this one, which I don't love as much. I mean, it's beautiful, the quality's great, all of that jazz, but I feel like the glitter in it doesn't necessarily go with the base color. I would like to see more gold or copper, and it looks more kind of silvery. But just for fun, as I complain about the eyeshadow getting out of control, let's just put glitter. All right, I don't have a mascara. I'm decluttering at the moment, so I'm just going to use this Urban Decay Perversion Mascara. It's on its last legs. So I've already talked about kind of foundation, concealer, powders. I will link that in a card and down below if you are interested in seeing that. The foundations that I got rid of really didn't work for me, so I don't want to put those on my face because I do have things to do out in the world today. So I'm going to use something that I'm in the middle of kind of testing out, and that is the Wet n Wild Cushion Foundation. I have it in the shade Light Ivory. This was a tad dark for me when I first got it, but I think the tone will work out a little bit better. Just thinking it's weird that it doesn't have a mirror, but that is so satisfying. Ooh. Mirror's a little bit much. Anyway, the only concern I have about this foundation, I've heard really great things about it, is that it does have a fragrance to it. I'm using the NYX sponge. I have used this foundation just a couple of times. I didn't notice any particular irritation at that point, but again, it was only a couple of times. So I'm just kind of concentrating the center of my face over my nose and just kind of around where I tend to be red. My skin in general, I'm pretty freaking happy with. I have a little something right there, but otherwise, I honestly have not really been wearing much foundation recently. That blended in really nicely. Again, the concealers that I decluttered weren't great, so I'm just going to keep on keeping on with this Photo Focus concealer from Wet n Wild. I am slowly but surely getting towards the end of it. All right, I just remembered that I got the mini Real Techniques sponges. I found them for $2 at TJ Maxx and figured, why not? They puff up quite a bit, I will say. I feel like this is much softer than the original orange sponge, which I do think I prefer to that NYX one, by the way. In case you were wondering, my thoughts on that NYX sponge, it's fine. But I think I prefer the Real Techniques one. Maybe it's just I'm more used to the Real Techniques one, I don't know. The powders that I decluttered, A, you've seen them if you're interested, and B, they're not great. So I'm going to use my Photo Focus powder in Warm Light. Although I'm definitely open to suggestions for powder. I don't mind this one. But, you know, I'd be interested in trying some others. So, your favorite cruelty-free powder? Go. I feel like that cushion foundation really set kind of on its own, which is interesting because I understand it to be more of a dewy, light, glowy sort of foundation. But I don't know. I didn't declutter any bronzers, so let's talk blush. So I'm decluttering this one from Black Radiance, which is owned by the same people that make Wet n Wild. It's in the shade Raspberry, and I really like the shade. I like the idea of the shade anyway, but I find this is the Artisan Baked Blush, by the way. I find this to be very patchy, difficult to blend, and difficult to make show up on my face. Now, Black Radiance is designed for people of color, and if I'm having trouble being, like, towards the palest of the pale, then I can only imagine how difficult this must be if you have a darker skin tone. So that is definitely heading out of my collection. I'm getting rid of 2 of the Wet n Wild blush sticks, not because they're bad products, but either. So this one is Hustle and Glow, and it is pretty, and I feel like it works on my skin tone. It's very orange. I'll swatch it out actually for you. It's rare that I want to put such an orange shade on my cheeks, so there's no reason to have that in my collection. Now, Peach Bums is really pretty. I like this a lot. However, it is pretty much the same. It's the sort of typical peachy pink with a gold shift or gold shimmer. This actually has little microparticles of gold glitter in it. I have the same shade. Milani's Blossom Time Rose is the same shade, but it has a finer texture, I feel like. It doesn't look quite as glittery on my face. And I'm also going to part with a sample of Tartes Amazonian Clay Blush, if I can get it open. In the shade Party, it is incredibly similar. It's just a hair pinker than Romantic Rose from Milani, and I like the Romantic Rose better, and also it's more product. It's beautiful, but I will put this on my face. If I can find a brush, here we go. I find it to be a similar sort of texture and application to the Milani blushes. This might have a little bit more pigment off the bat, which personally for a blush is not necessarily a good thing in my opinion. As far as highlighters, I'm only letting go of 2 of them. The first is Blossom Glow. This is a newer shade in the Megaglo highlighting powder line from Wet n Wild. Not because it's bad, but it's exactly the same as the Sweetest Bling, which I decided to keep because it's limited edition. It's got the cute heart in it. They're the same product though, so I didn't need 2 of them. Well, now you can see what the Sweetest Bling looks like, except pink. This is from that same collection, Lilac to Reality. It's a fun one to play with, but I have a couple of others that are similar in tone. The Goth highlighter in White Raven has more of a white base, but it has a similar kind of purpley blue shift, and I just prefer the formula on that one to this. This is a little bit chunkier. However, I think I'm going to actually use that shade from the Milani palette to see how I like it. Did actually recently purchase a Milani highlighter, one of the newer ones, the one in Day Glow, because I wanted a golden highlight and I really didn't have one. That's pretty. All right. So I might actually keep this palette around. I have a fantasy of buying a few Z palettes, going through all of my eyeshadows again, because there are so many palettes I have where I keep them around for this shade or that half of the palette, or, you know, and it just creates a lot of extra bulk, and I have a lot of shades that I don't really use. So I would love to at some point kind of tear apart all of my palettes and put all of the ones that I actually love and want to keep in their own sort of Z palettes and get rid of the ones that I don't. So I think that's actually really beautiful. So I'm going to keep that around and until I do that. All right, finally lips. Put my hair up. I am loving this like double bun thing recently. I don't know why. I think it's super cute. It's been my kind of go-to hairstyle recently. But I'm going to use a couple of these gel lip liners from Wet n Wild that I am decluttering. The first is called Bear to Comment, and the second is called Think Flamingos. So I'm going to use Bear to Comment on the outer portion of my lips. These are both, again, these are nice products. I would recommend them. I just don't use them. They're very creamy. They last decently. These Think Flamingos in the center. And there we have the finished look with a bunch of stuff that I'm getting rid of. And I don't mind the look. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is just things that I don't use, not necessarily bad products. But I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if this is fine. If you want more information on anything that I mentioned in this video, or if you do want to see the process of figuring out what I'm keeping, what I'm not keeping, I will be happy to finish editing those and upload them for you. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you very much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.